Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyla Hannington, and I'm the Public Outreach and Engagement Division Chief with the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights, the county's civil and human rights education and enforcement agency. Welcome to today's Community Conversation. Community Conversations are a partnership series between the Prince George's County Memorial Library System and the Office of Human Rights. With me today as co-hosts are Tiana Davis, my colleague at the Office of Human Rights, and Dr. Audrey Lau, the Adult and Senior Services Specialist with the Library System. Today, we are excited to host Yolanda Johnson, Executive Director of CASA, the Court-Appointed Special Advocates, as our special guest for Community Conversations. I got to learn about the incredible work of CASA and to meet Director Johnson at CASA's Emerging Adult Summit, held earlier this fall at Prince George's Community College. That summit, which featured young adults who had aged out of care, talked about the needs and gifts of emerging adults in our community and front-faced how we can all offer better supports. Yolanda serves as the Executive Director of the Court-Appointed Special Advocates, CASA, of Prince George's County, a role she has held for the past 2 years. She has been pivotal in positioning the organization in a post-pandemic landscape, maintaining CASA's core mission of serving youth in foster care, while also expanding its services to provide resources for former foster youth. Her leadership has been defined by intentionally strengthening community partnerships, building equitable organization practices, inclusion of people with lived experience, program development, and vision planning within a changing funding landscape. A proud graduate of Bowie State University, Yolanda utilizes her personal experiences and background in vocational education, juvenile justice, and civic and legal education to increase access to services for those who are most impacted by injustice. When she's not working, Yolanda enjoys volunteering, traveling, spending time with family, cooking, or sitting quietly with a hot cup of dirty chai tea. So welcome, Yolanda. It is just really an honor to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Kyla. That was great. Thanks to your colleagues and everyone over at the Office of Human Rights and the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. With everything that Kyla just mentioned, I can't do anything of that nature or to this magnitude with the work that we do in Prince George's County without the support of the community, really supportive board of directors, my team. I have a dynamic team of staff here at CASA, as well as our youth and our volunteers. So thank you. I am going to take you through a short journey of who we are, how we got started, and tell you a little bit about some of the initiatives we have going on, and then tell you how you can partner with us.
Sounds great. Mm-hmm. Do I just put your slideshow up?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and you all can move kind of fast through the slideshow because I'll talk a little fast. I'll try to make sure that I'm clear. CASA is celebrating next year in 2026, 25 years of existence. We started many years ago with just a collaborative group of people, different stakeholders and partners, folks from the community, folks from the court, all types of folks who were able to come together and say, you know what, we want to form court-appointed special advocates here in Prince George's County. And so that started in around 1992 with the Department of Social Services as well as legal aid. And all of those folks came together to decide, like, what are we going to do? And basically what they did is they came together, partnered with the Child Welfare and Juvenile Court to really understand how we could serve the best interests of children impacted by the foster care system here in Prince George's County. One thing to note is that Court-Appointed Special Advocates of Prince George's County is a part of a national umbrella, National CASA. However, we are an independent nonprofit that is overseen by a board of directors. And so after 1992, building this collaboration, and then in 2000, coming together and determining what we wanted to do, in 2001 is when the work began, which is why we are celebrating 25 years next year. So there'll be a lot of happy birthday CASA out there in social media, in our newsletters, all of that. So you'll get to hear more about our 25-year journey. This is our mission as of today. Basically, we maintain a very strong commitment to diversity, and we train and supervise volunteers from the community who advocate for the best interests of children. And you'll hear more about that and what does that look like, advocating for the best interests of children. And basically, when I say that we have a strong commitment to diversity, we must respect each child's individual needs. All of our children come into care with different needs, different backgrounds, different experiences. They all have suffered some form of abuse and neglect. So we really want to make sure that we are advocating for them based on their needs. This is just a slide to show you about how we approach best interest advocacy. What does that look like? Let's just think about the fact that if a child is removed from their home today, they're going to have to face a big, scary system of a lot of legal folks, the Department of Social Services, folks who are really speaking a lot of languages that a young person will not understand. And so it's really important that there's someone in that courtroom who's there for them, who can help them understand the process and help them navigate the process and hopefully ease a little bit of the anxiety that young people go through. So basically, our volunteers take the time to learn about the case, gather as much information as they can. So they learn about the background, they get all of the information about their school, about their family background, and they engage with the child. And then they make recommendations to the court based on the fact that they have taken a lot of time to meet with the child, to meet with everyone who is touching that child. It could be the Department of Social Services, it could be the educational system, everyone who touches that child. Our volunteers make sure that they're making contact with them and finding out what's going on in their lives. And then they collaborate with all of the partners in the case. So maybe there's mental health professionals involved with the child. Maybe there are community mentors involved with the child. Our volunteers really are a nucleus. I consider CASA being a nucleus for that child that touches everything around that child and making sure that we are gathering all of the information and giving the court the best picture possible to make a decision about that child's life. Please feel free to put your questions in chat. As we go forward, I'll answer them as I'm presenting, or I'll get to them at the end as well. Most people want to know, what does volunteering with CASA look like? So our volunteer engagement, after we recruit folks from the community, just like you and I, so they do not have to have a bachelor's degree in child welfare or anything like that. If you have a desire and you're 21 and over, we take you through a background check. We take you through 30 hours of extensive training. We provide all of the training. Our training helps you to understand the child welfare system, understand the adverse childhood experiences, the trauma that our youth face, as well as becoming culturally competent with working with our young people. After you go through the background check and the 30 hours of training, and it's important to note that 30 hours of training, 15 of those hours you do that independently, and 15 you actually are in a training with a cohort of folks. We actually just graduated 15 new volunteers on Tuesday night. So I'm really excited about that, because that means that's 15 more youth that we can provide with a volunteer advocate. And that's, yes, thank you, Kyla. That is something to celebrate. After all of that, the volunteer then becomes appointed by the court. That is very unique about this volunteer experience. You must become appointed by the court. So after the background check, after the 30 hours of training, then we submit your name to the court so that we can get your name placed in a court order to legally advocate for that child, legally be able to access the child's records and talk to everyone in the child's lives. We do ask that you meet with that child at least, we prefer twice a month, but at least once a month. Our volunteer commitment, which you'll see later on, is an average of about 8 to 12 hours a month. Sometimes it goes a little higher. It might even be a little less, depending on what's happening in that child's life. And so just keep that in mind. For about 2 to 3 hours of your time per week, you can become a CASA volunteer, and we hold your hand through the process. As I said earlier, I have a team of bad, wonderful case supervisors who are dynamic at what they do. Our case supervisors hold the hand of our volunteers and they pull them through that journey along the way. So when they're hitting roadblocks and maybe the child doesn't want to respond to them, or they're having a problem with maybe one of the providers or someone who's working with the child, our case supervisors are there to help them with that journey. So you're never alone. So, for folks who are out there and who are concerned about being a volunteer for youth in foster care, you won't do this alone. We have somebody who can help you along the way. And you would be able to advocate for that youth in court. You'll be able to make court reports. We train you how to do that. You'll be able to go to their school or gather information from their school. You will not do this alone. That's correct. Thank you. Just some demographics for you all to think about. I know sometimes numbers and demographics and data can be boring to some folks, but this is really important. And I want you to pause and really take a look at this. It shows you who are our kids that are in care, what are their backgrounds, and then who are the volunteers. And you'll see that we have a very small portion of youth who are Asian in care here in Prince George's County. Our largest population, largest demographic are African American youth. And you'll see that we are pretty aligned with volunteers for African American youth as well. Now, as that continues to upswing, we need more volunteers, and I'll show you a little bit more about that on the next slide. Then our Hispanic population, take a look at that. Almost 20% of our youth are Hispanic, Latinx, or of Spanish origin, but only 3.6, about 4% of our volunteers are representative of that same origin. So keep that in mind. We need more Hispanic, Latinx, and Spanish volunteers. We need more volunteers overall, but that is something for you to really pay attention to. You'll see that our Caucasian and white youth are about 7% of our population, and then we have a little bit under 20% of the volunteers. So keep that in mind as well. If you look down below under gender, about 70% of our population of youth are female or female identifying, and then about 91% of our volunteers are female. So y'all clap it up for the ladies who are volunteering. I tell you, they are some dynamic women and men. And we graduated in our class the other night. Out of those 15, there were 2 new males as well. So as you can see from this, we need more male volunteers. We celebrate all of the volunteers that we have, but we definitely need more male representation. So please, more Hispanic and of Spanish origin volunteers and more male volunteers as you all either champion for us in the community or you decide to become a volunteer yourself. This is just a year-over-year comparison about volunteer recruitment. For those of you who may be volunteers yourself, or you may be working with volunteer organizations, you probably have heard about the decline in volunteerism across the country. And this decline has happened over the past several years. Volunteer organizations, most of us had a large spike during the year of COVID and a lot of racial unrest, and people wanted to get out there and do things. And that made sense. So we had this big spike. But what has happened over the past few years is that what we found is the decline is happening, not just here in Prince George's County, but across the country, across the state, where people are making more intentional decisions about how they're spending their time, where they're spending their time. Family family dynamics or family responsibilities may be a reason why they're not able to volunteer. So you'll see here that in our fiscal year of 2021, we had about 69 volunteers who completed our pre-service training. That's our 30-hour training. In FY25, we had 37. Our goal each year is 40 to 60 new volunteers. So take a look at that. We need more volunteers, right? But here is a significant thing to pay attention to. Although there has been a decrease in the amount of volunteers who complete pre-service training, you'll see that there's only a slight difference in the amount of youth that we're able to serve. So there was 166 in FY21, but then in FY25, there was 147. So not much of a difference, right? And why is that? That's really important to know. And that is a testament to our case supervisors and our folks who work right alongside of our volunteers. Our volunteers stay an average of, I believe it's about 36 months on their cases, either on one case or they take on another case. So a lot of our volunteers stick around. One of the things that we like to pride ourselves on is our volunteers have a one-on-one approach. So they have one youth. Every once in a while, we do get some of our more veteran volunteers, as I call them, folks who have been around for many years, who may take on a family or two siblings. But it is very rare. However, that's after they've been around for a while. But most of the time, it's only one-on-one, one volunteer advocate, one youth. Also, for those of you who may have heard about the Guaranteed Basic Income Program, we were the organization awarded to serve 50 young people who aged out of foster care 2 years ago. And so in addition to the 147 and 156 that we served over the past 2 years, we also serve an additional 50 youth up until that program will end in March of 2026. So an additional 50 youth. So each year we're serving a little bit more than 200 youth. That's important to take note of. Although we've had that decline in volunteerism, we still are able to serve a good amount of youth. What does that look like with the need in the county? As of this week, there are about 335 youth in foster care. That has also declined. And so that is a testament to my partners and friends over at the Department of Social Services, because there was about 500 plus kids in care. Now, does that mean that there are not kids being abused and neglected? Absolutely not. That is really happening. But that is the number of youth who are coming into foster care. There are diversion programs that's keeping them out of care, like family preservation and things of that nature, that's happening over there. But that decline is still there. And the disparity, the difference in the amount of kids that we're able to serve versus the amount of kids that's in care. 335, about 150. So that means that we're a little bit over 40% of serving the kids here in care. And our goal is to really be able to assign a volunteer to every child who wants and needs a CASA volunteer. So we need to continue to build up our volunteer pool. I'm going to take a short, quick, brief break and see if there's any questions. What kind of gifts or skills should a person have to be a good fit or a good alignment to be a CASA volunteer? That's an excellent question. You know, one, you have to want to work with children. I would say also patience. Making sure that you have a lot of patience, because keep in mind that our kids have been through quite a bit of trauma. They also do not trust people easily. So having patience is really important. Also being able to be judicious or non-biased and really have an approach to working with young people where you don't bring your own biases into advocating for their lives. And that's something we also help people with in training, but that is something that it's really important to think about having before you determine if this is for you or not. So that's a great question. So I would say patience, being able to be unbiased, also being able to have a partner mindset. So making sure that you see everyone who's working on that case as a partner to make sure that that child is getting everything that they need. Really important that you're able to do that. Thank you for that question. Is most volunteer, another question I have here, is most volunteer during Monday through Friday workdays, or is it in the evening? That's an excellent question, or on the weekends, or both. So it depends. And there goes that question, that answer that I typically don't like when my staff says that. It depends, but a lot of it depends on what's going on with that child, but also what does your capacity as a volunteer look like? So if your capacity is that you can only meet with that child on the weekends, that's great. That's the another highlight and uniqueness about our volunteer opportunity is you really get to shape when you can attribute those 2 to 3, 4 hours a week in your life. So it really depends on you. We don't tell you when that's done. Of course, if you need to contact the school or something like that, you may have to do a little bit more of that during the week, but we don't require it. You could do it in the evenings, you could do it on the weekends. Sure. Can you talk to us more about the outcomes that you're seeing from that we're seeing from guaranteed basic income from our 50 youth? Yes, I can. You know, I'm so proud of these young people and having the ability to work with them, talk with them over these last couple of years has been amazing. I call them our lived experience experts. They are our partners. They are partners just like a funding partner or just like a board member or a community volunteer. They're our partners because we're learning from them and they've been providing us a lot of information about some of the challenges that they had in care, but then also a lot of the positivities that came out of care. And so what we're hearing from them is that one, when they leave care, and you'll hear me say more about this soon, is that a lot of our young people, unfortunately, are leaving care without some of the life skills that they need. No matter how much the Department of Social Services or organizations like CASA or mentoring programs try to show them those things while they're in care, keep in mind that their mind is cloudy with survival. Right? So now here they go and they walk out into the world after they age out, emancipate from care, and now they have to figure out how to pay a light bill or they have to figure out how to pay their rent and keep their rent up to date or save money or go on a job interview. Some of those things may not come up until they actually have to step into life and do it. So they're finding what we're hearing from them is that they could really utilize a site, a system. If anybody out there wants to help me build an app where they can access resources at their fingertips, that is something that they've asked for. The Emerging Adult Summit that Kyla mentioned, we had a great in-depth talk about what are some of the things that they could use. And they talked about like having templates for resume building or having a Q&A or something to help them when they need to advocate for themselves, when somebody's trying to take advantage of them, maybe in through their rent or things like that, legal representation. One of the things that we hear about is learning how to cook. What recipes can I make for myself that I could save money? Those types of things. One of the big things that we also hear from them, from these 50 youth, is that they would love to have another caring and trusted adult that they can depend on like they had when some of them had a CASA for those 50 youth. So we're seeing that. We are also seeing that some of them have saved their money. We had one who put a down payment on a home to purchase a home. We had a person a couple who used their money for transportation and buying a car. And then we have many of them who really are using the money to sustain themselves. These 50 youth aged out of foster care between 2020 and 2022. What was going on then? COVID. We were in the middle of a pandemic. So these kids really suffered a heavier impact than even kids who are aging out during other times. So I was happy to be able to be a part of this program because what we found is that many of them really, it took them a year or two to stabilize. It's taken that amount of time to restabilize themselves or just to become food secure. So we're seeing a lot of that. But one of the biggest benefits to this program is that we have a staff who works directly with these 50 young people. So when they have a need, they contact Miss Graves, and Miss Graves is able to help direct them to a new resource or help them just sort out a problem. So those are the types of outcomes that we're seeing. They also, through our partners over at Greater Washington Community Foundation, they also will have access, or they do have access now, that started, I believe, about 2 months ago, to a financial coach. And that financial coach is going to help them even when they leave out of the program and they finish the program. One of the things that we found through this is that when you do a good job with young people, they're going to come back and find you. Right? So they're going to come back and find that organization. And that is what has happened with CASA and what we've learned from these 50 young people as well. And so some of them, we've seen that maybe some of them have more stable mental health because during the time where they are receiving the funds, they're not worried about how they're going to pay their bills, or they have a little bit more supplement. Of course, the program is ending in March. And so now we're checking in with them to see how are they feeling. There's a big chunk of funds that you're not going to be able to get anymore after March, but how are you feeling about it? Are you connected to other resources? Those are the things that makes a difference, but they're still connected to us. If they need something, they can still reach out to us. This slide here has, and I'll get to some more questions in a second, but this slide here has a little bit of our FY25 impact. We do operate on a fiscal year, so July 1 to June 30th, and we served about 168 youth. They received advocacy support. About 140 volunteers contributed over 8,500 volunteer hours. Our volunteers put in a lot of hours. That is an estimate, and I believe that is much more than that. As you know, before, we successfully trained 37 new volunteers, and we provided over $80,000 of emergent support. Normally each year it's $50,000, but it was over $80,000 of emergent support to current and former foster youth. Through the Thrive program, those 50 youth received guaranteed income of $800 a month. So we distributed those funds in excess of about $500,000 for each year. So, that is where Kyla mentioned earlier that we have our core model, which is staying intact and is really strong about serving young people who are currently in care with volunteer advocacy. But then we have this group of young people who come back to us that we're providing resources to. So we're really determining how can we serve young people that are transition age youth and emerging adults, those lived experience experts. So when they leave care, how do we continue to support them? Because we know that when they leave care across the country, 30,000 youth leave care without support. And then 70% of them rely on government assistance within the first 4 years. And many of them, about half of them, experience some form of being unhoused within the first 18 months of leaving foster care. Many of our kids, even some of the Thrive kids that we've, Thrive young adults, we found that they couch surf. Right? Because they're not so stable. Until they can get stable, they're couch surfing. So it's really important that organizations like us and other organizations that are out there really determine how can we support them during that time frame. Especially, it sounds like that first 18 months, first 6 months, first 90 days is really important when they leave care. This is where the continuum of care model is coming in. We're going to be doing some research about, can we continue to keep our core model intact and maybe add an element to our process of how we serve kids to incorporate more of the former foster youth in that. I'm going to take a couple more questions. Is there a reason for more girls being in the foster care system? There's a bunch of theories that could be out there. We talk more, right? Girls normally talk more, so maybe there's more reporting. I'm not going to say that I know it's a hard reason, but it could just be that it's being more reported on girls. Oftentimes, they are vulnerable, but all of our young people are vulnerable. I think it also varies by county as well. So those are the numbers for us here in the county. How long generally does a volunteer work on each case? Is it months or years? Okay, Audrey, I'm going to give you this answer again. It depends. It depends on that case. We may assign a volunteer to a case and the case is closed within 6 months to permanency. Maybe that young person has been placed with a kin, a relative or something like that. Or it could be 2 or 3 years or more. It all depends on what's happening on that case. Does the volunteer stay with that case? Not necessarily. Sometimes our volunteers may say, you know what, I want to take a little bit of a break, and that's okay. These are really important, heavy and serious and traumatic cases that they're dealing with, so they may take a bit of a break. Our requirements that we ask for upfront is at least 1 year. And why do you all think that we ask for at least 1 year commitment?
For stability?
Yep. Thank you. Because these kids have enough people coming in and out of their lives. So we want our volunteers to be at least one stable person or a stable element in their lives. Thank you. What if someone wants to support CASA but doesn't think volunteering is the right fit for them? I'm going to get to that. Yes, thank you. That's an excellent question. Are there other ways to connect and support? Age-wise, how early are you all getting involved with the youth, and how are you working to build their trust despite the traumatic experiences they may have? I'm going to start with that question, and then I'm going to go back to the other about other ways to support us. Most of the kids that we see, 75 to 80% are 14 and over. That's really crucial because that means that we really have to work hard on partnering with the Department of Social Services and other providers to help prepare them to transition out, age out, all of that really crucial time. So we get a lot of kids when they're older. A lot of people want to come and volunteer and they're like, I want a baby or I want a little toddler. That's great, but it's rare that we're getting those kids. Some of those kids are oftentimes being diverted to relatives or maybe even being adopted, but most of our kids are older. So we are getting them after maybe they've been in care for a while. Maybe they've been in a few foster homes or they're just older, which is really important about your next question about building trust, right? Because if we're getting them as teenagers, that trust element is really important. And I'll tell you, one of the things that helps us build trust is that after a while, that child realizes that our volunteers do not get paid. They are volunteers and they want to be there. So after a while, that child is like, oh, you actually want to do this. And then they see you show up once and they see you show up again and again. And so then that's how that trust is built. And, volunteers sometimes in training, they're like, oh, we try to manage their expectations because as soon as you get that case, that child may not talk to you. We have stories out there where it took maybe about 3 months or 6 visits or something like that for that child to even say anything for the volunteer. But in training, we want to encourage them to keep going. You never know how you're making a difference. Kyla mentioned my time at the Department of Juvenile Services in the state of Maryland. One of the things that I know for sure is that you may not see your impact of what you're doing, but it's happening. You may not really see it until they get older, because I see a lot of young people now who I've worked with while I was with the Department of Juvenile Services, and they say to me, "Oh, I remember when you told me that. You got on my nerves then, but it really has helped me now in my life." And so it may take some time to build that rapport, but it's worth it, and it happens quite a bit. Thank you for that question. Partner with us. And why partner with us? One, we're award winning. I'm going to give us some snaps and pat ourselves on the back here. In 2024, we won a national award, the National Aging Out Institute Award, which basically says that we are doing it across the country, that we are really a great representation of what it looks like to prepare kids, to support the aging out of preparing kids to leave care. I don't know if I said that right, but to support them, to make sure that we're getting them connected to resources, to make sure that we're providing advocacy services to them. We have built on 25 years of experience and impact. We have local, state, and national collaborative learning and connections. As I said, we are connected to National CASA for their branding and standards, even though we are independent. And then there are state CASAs. There are CASAs across the country that are state CASAs, and then local CASAs, where there are CASA organizations in each county. You do not have to live in Prince George's County to be a Prince George's County volunteer. Most of our volunteers live in the county, but many of them also live in Charles County, Montgomery County, neighboring counties. So keep that in mind. We're very intentional about not just saying that we're including lived experience experts in our work, but actually doing it. Our young people, especially through this Thrive program, they present for us. They speak for us sometimes. People reach out to us sometimes and say, "Hey, we're looking for a young person who may want to speak about their experience in care, or provide their thoughts on how we can better serve." We call on them, and then we also encourage them to get paid. If you or I are if somebody calls on us to consult or speak, most of the time you're going to get some type of fee. And so I want to make sure that our lived experience experts are looked at as partners in building programs. So we've had listening sessions with them. We also have them speak on panel discussions. We have them speak to volunteers to really learn from them and include their thoughts in our work. That's really important, that you include lived experience experts in your work. I want to encourage anyone out there who's working with young people or any type of vulnerable population. Listen to them, hear from them, take what they're saying and incorporate it into your work. So that whole saying, like, nothing for us without us, is really important. These are just some of our funding partners and supporters. We are, really respected here in the state of Maryland. So we get funding from some of these folks. Some of them are our supporters as well. But down at the bottom, these committed group of individual donors, really important. We have folks just like you and I who give us $5 a month, $5 a year, $500 a year, whatever it is that they can do. They're just as important as a lot of these folks here. As you can see, we do receive support from the Prince George's County Executive's Office, as well as the County Council. The Greater Washington Community Foundation are huge supporters of ours, and the Office of Crime Prevention and Youth and Victim Services. Our children are victims of abuse and neglect, and so VOCA is one of our supporters as well. And then we have a host of foundations that we work with. MGM is also one of our funding partners as well. So lots of folks there. About 40 to 50% is some form of state and local government funding. 40 to 50% is our foundation funding. And then we have the smaller buckets of our individual donors as well as corporations. So if you all have any ideas of funding partners that we should be talking to, feel free to send them my way. Back to the question about how can you get involved. I always say to people there's 3 ways. One, help us raise awareness about the needs of youth in foster care here in Prince George's County. How can you do that? Basically, you can host something at your home or in your community, or email me and say, hey, Yolanda, I'd like for you or one of your team members to present to my group, to my church group, to my fraternity or sorority, whatever it is, help us raise awareness. You can just simply do that. Share our information, join us on social media, share our stuff within your networks. That can help us raise awareness. 2, help us raise funds. We're a nonprofit. I am always going to say help us raise funds, right? That's really important. And then 3, help us to increase our volunteer pool. We need volunteers. That to me is the most important way to help us, is to either become a volunteer yourself, or if you know it's not for you, send it out to folks and say, hey, here's a volunteer opportunity for you. Even if you would like to help, but you don't want to take on the 1-year commitment, email us, go online and contact us, give us a call, because there may be things that you can do. We often have tabling events in the community, and we are looking for people who may want to commit some of their time to do that. So there's multiple ways that you can get involved. I'm going to stop our slide deck there, but just if you could just leave it just for a minute, just in case anybody has a phone and like to screenshot that, or take the QR code. The QR code will lead directly to our website, where you'll be able to either find the volunteer link where you can apply to be a volunteer, or donate to CASA, or just reach out to us, or join us on social media. Really important. You'll get to see a lot of the things that we're doing there. So
I was going to jump in just for a quick second for people who maybe are not reading the screen right now, and let you know that we have put some of that information in the chat where you're watching. It should be up on Facebook and YouTube. That has the website, which is displayed on the screen right now, which is https://pgcasa.org. Their phone number is 301-209-0491. And you can also find them on social media by going to Instagram at CASA_PGC, or on Facebook, LinkedIn at Court Appointed Special Advocates / Prince George's County. Thank you very much, Director. I just wanted to have the chance to say that out loud.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thanks again to the Office of Human Rights and all of you who have joined today or will listen at a later time. Again, reach out to us, Court Appointed Special Advocates, Prince George's County. We would love to answer any questions that you may have about how we serve or how we can partner to serve young people who are in foster care or who have experienced foster care here in Prince George's County. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to just take that off the screen. And then I loved your presentation, and I think it was so important. It was really an honor.
Not too fast, Kyla?
Yeah. Pardon me?
Oh.
I didn't hear what you said.
Not too fast, but Audrey's giving me the go ahead. She said it was good. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was not too fast. Okay. No, it was great. It was great. We have a couple more questions, and I'm hoping, are you good to stay with us for a few more minutes while we just ask a few more questions?
Absolutely.
One of the things that your bio talked about was how you've been expanding services to provide resources for former foster youth. And of course, that's how I connected with you, was at this Emerging Adult Summit, which obviously really impacted me. And I was so glad to hear of the work. And I was just wondering if you can talk about in a little bit more, and I just like your journey on enhancing the support and, how it's been received, because I really appreciated the own voices element of it. And so can you just talk a little bit about your journey into this work?
Sure. My own personal journey.
Well, I
into
have
this
to,
field?
yes, that's also one of my questions. So yes, your own
Ah,
personal journey and how it's working as you're looking at with emerging adults.
sure, sure, absolutely. And I'll be brief about that. One of the things that I did when I'm not going to say was younger, but at an earlier time, was working in vocational education. And in vocational education, I found that working with young people, whether they in foster care or out of foster care, and then also with my own children, is oftentimes we have we have an assumption that they know things, right, and that they have the ability to not only know that they know things, but they have the ability to practically implement those things in their lives every day. And adults make this assumption, and that is something that I found through vocational education, that it's not true. Somebody has to hold their hand. Somebody has to walk them through it at a certain point. That's the same thing for even you and I. It's important that, you know, we have demonstrations of how to do something. And in vocational education, that's clear. You know, I worked in cosmetology, I worked in a horticulture class, and we literally would show students how to do things. And so then, as I started working for the Department of Juvenile Services, I saw a lot of kids, a lot of young people, once they were already in juvenile justice, already in the system. And then working with civic and legal education, back to that whole practical, getting them to really practice their skills, having a space to practice their skills. Same thing in vocational education. And that's something that's really important, even in this work, which I always kind of use a frame of reference is, okay, how are we helping them learn these practical skills so that they don't wind up in juvenile justice, and that we give them what they need early on. And so when I came to CASA, you know, I learned from my staff that yes, they're doing our core model and we're doing that well. But I would often hear of all of these great stories about young people who are no longer in care. And so we have our formal model, but informally, we continue to serve young people who come back to find us when they need help, because they are now in the practical daily living of life and they need help to navigate those things. So we have two main areas in which we can help with those practicals, either those skills or practical resources. And that's through the Thrive Prince George's County program, that the Thrive Guaranteed Basic Income program that we talked quite a bit about. But then also we have what we call Fostering Opportunities Fund, and that's how we were able to provide those $50,000 to $80,000 of emergent support each year. In that fund, one of the things that we can pay for is, like, if a young person needs a down payment on an apartment, if they need to go to an after school care or a summer camp, we could pay for that. If they need legal support, we can help the Department of Social Services with that. Maybe even helping with furniture, helping them stabilize themselves through food. That's really important. Just basic food and helping them become food secure. So I take all of what I've seen in my career and I really am looking at, okay, how can we formalize this? Do we merge what we're already doing with those kids that are those transitional age youth kids? So those 14 and over, we're providing them with educational supports and educational contacts. We also I serve on a committee to help provide scholarships to young people. We have an amazing donor that allows us to do that, and helps to get them connected to higher education, whether they want to go to college, whether they want to build a business, they may want to go to hair school, go to nail school or something like that. We can support current and former foster youth with those scholarships in order to do that. And so maybe some of them want a short-term certificate. We can support them in that as well, but that's still very informal. And so what we're doing is we have a great partnership with the University of Maryland, the Do Good Institute. We have some great interns that come to us. And so starting in January or February, I'm going to have an intern who's going to be doing some feasibility research for us to say, okay, how can we better serve these youth? What are some of those practical skills that they need? What is the time frame that we may be able to help them when they transition out of care? Or what is it that we can provide, or what is out there already that can support them? How can we maybe bring folks together to better support youth before they age out of care and when they leave care? So that's a long answer to say, I use that lens every day to think about how we can do that, but also what makes sense for the organization in our next 25 years. What does that look like? My staff and I did an activity that my COO facilitated, and it was basically when you open a newsletter, and I'm going to ask you all this, just from what you have learned about CASA. Say you open a newspaper, and maybe I'm dating myself by saying newspaper, digital newspaper, right, or something, and there is a headline about CASA. What would you want it to say? What would you want it to say in the next 5-10 years, based on what you just heard? Tiana, I'm going to start with you.
I'd love for it to say something about how someone you've helped has achieved this great thing, and now they're giving back to CASA.
That's good stuff. Thank you. Kyla?
I would want it to talk about something about the number of youth that have been supported and helped.
Let's go. Love that. All right. Audrey?
I think I'd like to see some interviews with some people who've gone through and talked to people who might still be in the program, encouraging them to open up to the people who are helping them and mentoring them, and how important these people were, even though they didn't maybe think so at the time.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's good. Oh, you all have easy dreams. We can get that. We can get that going. My staff has things like, oh, we want to have a house, a transitional home for them. You know, I want a big endowment donation, you know, all of that. So, or we want to be cutting a ribbon on something, you know, tangible to support young people. So these are all great, though. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks to all the listeners out there as well.
I want to ask a real quick question. I know teens are not always looked kindly upon in the news these days. I mean, that when you asked that question, I thought every time we see teens in the news, it's never positive. Yeah. And so I guess if, you know, you talk about 75% of your, these kids are 14 years or older. And so how do you talk to people about kind of changing that attitude about all these kids are just, you know, heathens and, you know, doing all kinds of crazy things on the streets? How do you help us, you know, want to spend time with them? I mean, you look like you're super positive and everything, so you obviously have great stories. So how do you help us like feel like you do?
Yeah, thank you, Audrey. That's an excellent question. And I'm very direct about that part, because what you will not do is talk, you know, utilize a deficit mindset towards our children, right? And that's what happens quite often with folks, is that there's a deficit mindset. As you can imagine, and I'm just using this as an example, guaranteed basic income. You know, I remember hearing a question, well, how do you know the kids won't use it for drugs and alcohol? Right? We don't. But how many of us have squandered funds before? Why do we get to judge our young people? Right?
Yep.
Why do we get to judge them? Yes, we see things in the news, all of that. But do you get to hear about the stories that Kyla heard about, where one of our young persons was, because of his work with CASA, you know, he was very apprehensive while in care, but because of his work with his CASA advocate, he is now working for the federal government. or the stories about the young man who actually put a down payment on a home or went to IT school. Those are the stories that I get to hear about. There is a young lady that I used to work with when I was with my previous nonprofit, she sent me a picture. Her picture is on a billboard in Baltimore City because she's a dynamic model today. Right? I also work with a young person. I have a lot of stories. I also work with a young person who is now an attorney. Right?
Yeah.
And so you don't get to put your mouth on our young people. Right? And we just have to be very frank about that. You want to get me riled up? You start talking about our kids. It's like people tell you never let someone speak over your children. I'm the same way when it comes to these kids. It's really important because you never know what they're going to be. Yes, we see them acting out sometimes now, especially while they're still in care. In their trauma, they don't trust people. People have hurt them, right? So people have hurt them. So we have to be advocates. So where my staff and volunteers are advocating on a daily basis for kids, I also have to be kind of an advocate of educating the community about who our kids are, how dynamic they are, and if they have some things in place, most of them are going to thrive. They're going to thrive. They may take a little bit of time to dig themselves out of a space, but that happens with you and I too, right? Because
I was about to say,
yeah, we're hit with
absolutely,
life.
100%.
Yeah, we're hit with life sometimes. So that's such an excellent question, Audrey. We just have to continue to educate people, put stories out there. As you said, put stories, some of those success stories out there, or just plain stories. It doesn't have to be that they put a down payment on a home. It could just be like, I was able to buy groceries for myself for the last several months, or I was able to care for myself. I do know a story of one of the Thrive youth Thrive young adults who used their funds to help get their siblings out of foster care or support to get their siblings out of foster care. These are real young people, dynamic, smart, intelligent. And a lot of times because they're approached with a deficit mindset, people will miss the uniqueness about these children. And so it is our job to advocate and educate the community about who they are. Thank you for that question.
Well, Yolanda, what a closer. That was awesome.
Yes. Well, thanks to Audrey, right? Yeah. Good question.
Unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you so much, Yolanda, for being with us and sharing about the critical work of the court-appointed special advocates. For viewers, I just want to recap here. You have heard a lot. And so first of all, please go to pgcasa.org, pgcasa.org to learn more about this. You are hearing such amazing things about what CASA is doing and about youth. And the thing is, these young people who are in care right now or who are emerging adults, these are our future or current parents. These are teachers. These are leaders. This is the community that we are all going to celebrate and gain from and learn from and interact with and become friends with. And so you have such awesome ways as members of the audience right now where you can support CASA. And so we heard Yolanda talk about the fact that they can use volunteers. Like, they love volunteers, and it's 2 to 3 hours a week. You get tons of training, tons of support. It is fantastic. And if you're somebody who's like, well, I don't really have time, but you have $10 that you can donate, there's a great donation button on their website. Again, pgcasa.org. It is really amazing. I feel so fortunate that I was able to go to this Emerging Adult Summit and just have a tiny bit of exposure to what they're doing. And so we really encourage you viewers to just get to know CASA and the young people in our community who are so awesome. And then just for us, we do have a bunch of other programs coming up. One, a little bit of a slowdown because of December, but please visit the Office of Human Rights website at civilrights.mypgc.us just to check out what we're doing and what we're offering in the community, which is many things in addition to events, investigating complaints of discrimination, combating human trafficking, making sure all people can access county government services in the language of their preference. And then please visit the library at pgcmls.info. They have an event button at the top, or you can go to it by hitting /events on that address, and you can see all the things that they're doing every single day for you. This is a very long sentence, so I'm going to end it now. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And again, Yolanda, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. And Kyla, I want to mention briefly, we have another training coming up in January. So please, 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 if you're out there and you're interested, go on our website and fill out an application as soon as possible. That training will start on January 20th, but you need an interview before that. So I would say no later than January 5th, put in your application to be a volunteer. Thank you.
Yeah. Right. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
So long.
Thank you.